This is a presentation from the 2013 Cannabis World Summit. Please visit www.cannabisworldsummit.com for more great cannabis information, which is available to you completely for free. This information is being made available to you in part thanks to our sponsors. Please visit their websites to learn more about their excellent products and services. The following presentation is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc. Please note that regardless of any statements expressed or implied in the following presentation, that we do not condone you breaking any laws. We are not providing any legal, medical, or financial advice of any kind. No comments about cannabis being a cure for any medical use, expressed or implied, is to be taken as a claim or guarantee. None of the statements have been verified by the FDA of the United States, Health Canada, or the governing organizations of your particular country. And again, this information is being provided for informational purposes only, and the participants exercise their freedom of speech discussing what they believe to be true. We do not guarantee the accuracy of any information provided. It is your responsibility to evaluate the information before you choose to make any use of it. Please consult with a doctor knowledgeable about cannabis prior to using cannabis, and or prior to discontinuing any medications you may be currently using. Please check with the laws of your country and region to determine whether you are legally permitted to use and or grow cannabis prior to any involvement with cannabis yourself. Even though we believe that cannabis ought to be legalized, we do not condone you violating any laws. Please review the legal disclaimers on the Cannabis World Summit website and only proceed to enjoy this presentation if you agree with all legal disclaimers, agree to hold the company, Leaves of Hope Productions Inc., and the presenters harmless and are of legal age in your region. Thanks to Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com for the music used in this introduction.
So I have Cade on the line here with me today from Labworx.com, and we're going to be talking about an interesting way of vaporizing your concentrates today, and also we're going to discuss making concentrates as well in a safer way than some of the alternative methods out there that some of you might have already discovered, so that of course you can take advantage of the health benefits of working with concentrates as opposed to bud, although of course bud is still good for you, but there are better ways to be consuming it than just rolling it up and smoking it. So, Cade, thanks a lot for doing this call with us today.
Oh, absolutely, no problem.
So, before we get started talking about these interesting glass titanium pieces that you create and discussing how they all work and all, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get started in this business of creating this glass artwork for concentrates?
Absolutely. I started blowing glass in about 99. I just bought a bunch of supplies and glass, so I'm pretty much self-taught in the medium. I started making jewelry and started making little flower, pipe bowls, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
I pretty much got into the lab side and creating Labworx due to the fact that I was producing quite a bit of wax and concentrates, and we kind of needed a new way to use them and inhale them. I came across Hashmaster Cut is the person who originally invented the swing concept. He's actually up in your neck of the woods in Canada. And a friend of mine got a hold of one. He needed it repaired. I looked at it. I thought, oh, my God, how perfect for the situation at the time. And we just kind of took the design and innovated it and kind of brought it up to the next level and made it available to the masses, because before it was kind of a coveted design and item.
Mm-hmm.
So we really wanted to bring it to the masses, and with the huge explosion of concentrate usage, it's perfect timing. So.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, of course, is there a lot of concentrate? You're from California. I should mention that. So, of course,
Southern California.
Pardon me?
Southern California, yes.
Southern California. So there's a lot of great quality bud and concentrates, I would imagine, on the scene down there available for people there. So, of course, I'm sure your business must be booming.
The amounts, the array of assortment of concentrates down here is it's awesome. And it's really nice because it's really providing for the people that need medicine as medicine, not just, recreational users per se. So.
Well, I'll just put the pun out there that it must be mind-blowing with the amount of concentrates you have.
Yeah. It really is. It is.
All right. So of course, I'm looking at your website, and people, of course, feel free to also click on the link that's provided next to this recording, so that you can also take a look at the website. And by the way, if you click on the website link, it will open up in a new browser window, so that this recording will keep on playing, so you can look at the website at the same time. So can you tell us a little bit about these products? Like, what's so special about the Skillet Vapor, the curve? Like, can you explain that? What is it? How does it work? And why is this an excellent? I don't want to say superior choice, but it may be superior to some of the other methods out there anyway. So I don't want to say the best. I don't want to say anything out there is the best, but it is definitely a superior choice in many respects.
It's I would say it's definitely tailored for people that don't have any kind of pre-existing lung issues, because it is a pretty large volume of medicine that you receive when you're using one of these devices. Mm-hmm. Vaporizers using flower, it's a very subtle intake, and it's very easy on the lungs. This, even though it's pure THC and medicinal qualities, it's still just a very large dosage all at once. So, people that are older, or like I said, anyone with any kind of existing lung issues, we don't really suggest our device.
Okay.
I would say it varies from other vaporizers and whatnot. Just the whole functionality of it. The fact that you're using a titanium on a hinge and you're preheating it with a torch. And it takes a little bit of getting used to actually use it. You don't want to use it when it's too hot. It can't be too cold, or it won't actually, work efficiently. Mm-hmm. So it actually does take a little bit of time to use one of these. And we also make them in fused quartz, which seems to be kind of the bigger rage down here, because it's not giving any, say, metallic taste associated with titanium. Some of the connoisseurs kind of notice the slight variance of taste differences. And the fused quartz seems to really be the end thing right now as far as the concentrates that we produce.
So are you talking about the plates that you heat up with the torches made out of infused quartz? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the titanium pieces we produce are actually, it's all kind of like a metal hinge system, and the fused quartz is more of like a fused quartz paddle that's in a guide tube, and it swivels back and forth as opposed to swinging up and down. We have, videos of both on our website, so you can see the main difference. Yeah.
Okay. So, of course, there's videos on your website, and I'll just mention that for what it's worth. Of course, people feel free to click on those videos after this recording, of course, to learn more about how to use this product. You can actually see it, and as a saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, while a moving video must be worth at least 10,000 words in that respect. So you can get an understand of how this actually works. So, So from what I understand, now, as I've explained to you, I've never used one of these up here in Canada. Mm-hmm. I've just, I know out in Vancouver, I've seen people on videos using it out there. Just locally, I've never had the pleasure of encountering this personally. But so from what I understand, you put a little dab, I believe is the correct terminology, correct me if I'm wrong, on the titanium skillet. Now, is that after it's been heated? Can you explain to me the process? Imagine we have one in front of us, for listeners as well, what would be the first thing that you would do? Oh, and this attaches to a bong, correct?
Yes, it attaches to a water pipe. We have two different angles. So we have a 45-degree angle that will fit into a water pipe. Mm-hmm. We also have a 90-degree angle, which are for bubblers or stemless pipes. Okay. Basically what you want to do is your heat source, you want to use butane. You don't want to use the big propane torches that you find in home improvement centers. Okay. Due to the fact that propane is a very dirty gas, and it'll leave all kinds of foul remnants on your titanium or quartz if you use it constantly. So we definitely suggest for everyone to use butane. And you don't have to have a big torch. You can get a small micro torch or the torch they use to work on electronics. You can find at sometimes electronic supply stores. So butane is definitely the heat source you want to use.
Could you Could you use, for example, one of those windproof lighters that are butane little mini torches? Can that work as well?
Yes, those can work. They might take a little bit longer to heat up the plate, but they will work as well. The triple-headed little lighters are actually better than the single head. It'll take more like 30, 40 seconds as opposed to, say, 10 or 15 seconds with the bigger torch. So it just takes a little bit longer. Yeah.
Perhaps one of those ones made for cigars, for example, with the triple heads would be a better choice. Okay. Yeah,
absolutely. When we were first starting off, I was actually able to heat a couple of pads just off our gas stove. So, I mean, be creative with the heating source, but really try to stay with butane and not propane for your heat source.
Now, just for argument's sake, let's just say someone has a regular a Bic lighter, just regular candle type of flame from a butane lighter. Can that work as well?
You know what? I actually have been successful with that as well. It'll take more like about a minute or so to heat up. With the Bic lighters, I really don't suggest or recommend that you leave them on for more than 15, 20 seconds at a time. Mm-hmm. So if you are going to try that method, have a few lighters on hand so you can change them every 15 or 20 seconds so they don't overheat.
Okay, and I presume you're heating the underside of it as well so that you're not necessarily getting the black. Well, then again, it's butane, so it shouldn't be doing that, right?
Yeah, exactly. You might find a little bit of carbon buildup if you use, just a Bic lighter, but if you heat it from the underside, then that's a non-issue.
Okay.
Basically, you start off, you want to get a small dab or a small amount of the concentrate on the end of, you can either use a paper clip, we make glass dabbers. There is a dabber company out there that also has all kinds of utensils for dabbing. All kinds of different tips and ends and whatever, tickles your fancy. Mm-hmm. So you want to get a small amount. It doesn't need to be much more than a match head's worth to begin with if you're starting off. And with the titanium and quartz, you want to take a couple of rounds to season the plate. So you're going to want to heat it up and put the concentrate on and let it just kind of sizzle and bubble around. And that's going to help oxidize and produce an oxidant layer.
Okay.
And that's going to help the concentrates flow a lot better. So all that, like I said, is on the video to help people, season and break in their pieces before they use it.
Okay.
So with your dab, you want to have that in one hand or on your counter. You want to go ahead and swing or swivel the pad. So with the titanium, you swing it up. With the quartz, you swing the pad away from the skillet piece. Mm-hmm. You want to heat it for, generally it's about 10, 15, 20 seconds, just depending on how hot your torch is. You want to back the torch off, turn it off, and let the glow kind of dissipate from the titanium or quartz. Do not want to hit it when either one are glowing red. It's way too hot. It's going to feel hot on the lungs, and it's going to burn your material and not taste right.
So how many seconds after you've seen that sort of like a dull, I would imagine it's a dull red kind of glow. It goes away. How many seconds later would you be putting your dab on?
I would 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 5, 10 seconds, just depending on how hot you got it. If you're just getting it to a slight glow, I would say about 5 seconds, but you definitely want the glow to be away, to dissipate before you swing the pad back under or swivel the pad back under.
Okay.
And then basically you just want to take your dab and you want to apply the dab to the plate through the little side hole. Mm-hmm. And you want to it's kind of instantaneous. You have to kind of inhale as you're applying it because it vaporizes so quickly you have a short window of literally just a few seconds to inhale. So it's kind of a matter of getting used to the timing of it as well.
I see. Okay. So as with most of these types of devices for vaporizers and a lot of smoking devices as well, there's a little bit of a learning curve with most of these things. So as with yours. But once of course, you get the learning curve underway and you become pro with it, I would imagine this is very quick that a person would learn after a couple of dabs they're
absolutely
comfortable with this. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now
I mean, there have been people that have, some physical disabilities, say people that are in wheelchairs or people that don't have full function of their limbs. They can have a little bit of an issue with it, so I would definitely use caution for those people as well.
I see. Okay. Well, that of course makes sense, and I'm sure that they would think along those lines anyhow. But so the next question, of course, you mentioned that this hits you hard. Now, when you take a dab, now, of course, I see a little bit of an irony using a paper clip when you also have a titanium skillet.
Right.
So, of course, you got the impure metals with the pure titanium. But nonetheless, ignoring that little bit there, how just so that we have an idea, like of course Rick Simpson commonly talks about medicating in terms of something about the size of a grain of rice or a half a grain of rice. How big, roughly to a grain of rice, just the average grain of rice, which is about a 1/4 inch long, not a long grain, just a regular white grain, uncooked. How big would the dab be in comparison to a grain of rice, just so that people can have a mental comparison of what size we're talking about here?
As far as starting off, what would
be starting off, and what would be sort of like a regular dose for someone who's used to this?
I would say like about a 1/4 of a grain of rice, or about a match head's worth, and even that can be a little bit too much for someone at first. So I would say start as small as possible and work your way up.
Okay. So literally just initially just get the paper clip sort of greased up or moistened a little bit, so to speak, with better err on the side of too little and do it again than
absolutely
be hit too hard.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I know some people like being hit hard, but of course, a lot of people also do this for medicinal purposes, and the goal isn't to get
that's right.
comfortable from pain or whatever the symptoms may happen to be. So
absolutely.
So is that pretty much it? Like, how's the cleaning of this product? Does it every time you torch it, pretty much sort of like a self-cleaning oven? It just it takes care of any previous residues, or?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, you'll see a little bit of black residue after you use the piece, and literally every time you reheat it, it'll burn all that off. Some people, if they don't take our recommendation and use propane, or if they're really, really using it a lot, heavy users, then sometimes we'll suggest using, say, like a Brillo pad, and just scuffing up the titanium or the quartz with the Brillo pad and getting all the rough stuff off.
Okay. Now, would
the
just
titanium will,
sorry, go ahead.
The titanium will last a long time. I mean, I've had people that have had their same piece for 2 years and they still use it. So it just really depends on how well you take care of it, how much you use it. As far as cleaning the glass portions, I make everything out of stainless steel. So as far as soaking, there's no issues there as far as any kind of rusting or oxidation with that. So what I usually suggest is have someone soak the glass piece in, like a water pipe cleaner or an alcohol solution, and just let it sit overnight, and then you can just hit it with the brush or wash it out the next day. So it's just like cleaning any other glass, per se. And
it comes out good as new?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So is there anything else that particularly about, first of all, actually, we should also mention, let's discuss what are some of the benefits of using this, for example, versus smoking bud or hitting a bong directly. Like, you can, of course, use concentrate, for example, on a bed of ash.
Yes.
Or I'm sure other methods people come up with as well. But how would this be superior, for example, to just using the concentrate on a bed of ash in a bong, for example?
Do you need those? Yeah. Okay. It's pretty much preference. I mean, health-wise, it's going to be probably the same effect. Or same, I mean, I would say it's the same thing. It's just a preference thing. With these skillets, it's there's kind of like a cult following almost. Like it's kind of a ritual, heat swing vape kind of thing. It's almost like its own culture now. Between globes and skillets, it's just it's taken on its own culture. So it's pretty amazing.
Okay. Well, speaking of the cultural aspect of it, I'm just going to ask you this question. It's kind of a point-blank question here. I'm not sure whether this is a positive or a negative, but it's more of a cultural thing again. Like, of course, you mentioned that a lot of people who use this are medicinal users, and of course, there's, I'm sure, a lot of people who use this recreationally as well, because, of course, it gives you a large dose quite fast, as you mentioned. And I've never experienced it before, but I'm looking forward to it probably very soon. But anyhow.
Awesome.
For the feature review, I'm going to find a way to get some concentrate to do this. But anyhow, the point of the matter, what was it going? Oh yes. So of course I've heard some people talking about this. Now of course there's always different sides of the perspective. There's some people who are medicinal users who, there's always these factions of people who are sort of thinking their side is the prim and proper and so on and so forth.
Right.
It seems that there's a lot of people who perceive that that people use these types of skillets with the torches and all in a cultural sense, that these are recreational users. They do it publicly, and of course some people who've never utilized cannabis before, they see this sort of thing, and it kind of it appears unusual for them in a respect. You know where I'm going with this, and I don't mean to. I really don't mean this to come across as a negative, because as with everything, it's just people understanding what's going on here, because it is of course a superior way of consuming a concentrate. However, what would you say to those people who might have perhaps a tainted impression of this just because of the recreational users? What would you say to the medicinal users to encourage them to give this a try?
At first look, it does look very, I don't want to say criminal, but it's much more intense because you're using a torch and these tools and all these devices and everything. It's kind of mechanical, Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's just the new culture. It's like anything, trying to convince the old dogs the new way. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't really push people towards, you have to try this type of thing. If they're not curious or they already have a negative attitude about it going into it, then I don't suggest that it's for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine that back in the day, before they've seen a bong, for example, that might have seemed unusual as well. But of course, once you've seen it or even used it a few times, you kind of realize, hey, there's nothing to this.
Exactly. Yeah, in a few years, it'll be the norm, just like water pipes were, 20, 30 years ago. So, yeah.
Okay. In a few years, it'll be the norm. I kind of like what you're implying with that. Hopefully, that's, of course, with the laws and all. As it sweeps across the states, then this will become the norm. But anyway.
Yeah, and the laws are really weird here. It's very confusing. It's considered a federal offense if you use any kind of solvent to produce a medicine, but to be in possession of it is legal. So it's really like kind of twisted how the laws are in effect with concentrates right now. Mm-hmm. As far as the water and the sifting, all that kind of stuff, natural process, it's completely legit across the board. But when it comes to solvents, it's really kind of a gray area as far as legalities and state to state and federal, and it's still kind of underground, I think, because of that issue.
Okay. Well, let's discuss making the concentrates because, of course, to use your product now, perhaps we should clarify, because you mentioned to me before the call, but people need to understand, this product can only be used with concentrates. Is that correct?
Correct.
And clean concentrates. Can you explain what you mean by a clean concentrate as opposed to a dirty concentrate we talked about earlier?
Yeah, a clean concentrate would be, your oils or your hard candies, your waxes, or anything that's coming, if it's coming from a sift, like keef, or if it's going to be water-based extract, it has to be very pure. You can't have a lot of plant materials in it, or once again, you're going to kind of be defending the purpose because you're going to be burning plant material and getting the carcinogens, which is what you're trying to get away from in the first place using concentrates.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So, of course, with the concentrates, you get less of the smoke and less of the other side effects of burning the plant material. But just out of curiosity, again, playing Angel's Advocate, so this is, I would imagine this is just my speculation, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is this sort of like a hybrid between vaporization and smoking in the sense that obviously when you put the dab on the skillet, some of it will vaporize, but doesn't some of it also get burned?
That's another gray area. It depends on which dictionary you look online as far as what vaporizing is.
Okay.
Some say, some define it as a mist state. some define it as a semi-smoke state. I mean, it just depends on like I said, on which dictionary you use. It's hard to say what it is. I mean, it is kind of like vaporizing because you're not smoking plant material, but at the same time, that is definitely a type of smoke and not just a mist or steam that's going into your lungs. So I guess it is kind of a hybrid. I guess that's a way to put it.
Well, I guess one of the perks is the temperature is high enough that you get everything, all the cannabinoids vaporizing, as opposed to like the other vaporizers where you can regulate the temperatures and just lift the THC and leave the CBDs and CBNs. Here you get the whole smoking experience. But perhaps you're mentioning, of course, using the dictionary definitions to perhaps clarify, because, of course, vaporizing also tends to be much more efficient than, for example, smoking, whereas a lot during smoking gets converted into, well, the THC, the CBDs, all the cannabinoids get burned and destroyed in the process. So, for example, smoking a joint is regarded as being the least efficient. You use the most amount of pot because, of course, a lot of the smoke is just going in the air just from the end of the joint. It doesn't even enter your mouth. But a lot of it is also consumed by the fire as well. And there's about, they say about, you only get about 25% of the smoke that way. And that's that's a ballpark estimate, more or less, of course. But just a general rule of thumb for most people would find it applicable. So would you say that this is almost as efficient as other forms of vaporizing, or about as efficient? Like, how would you sort of like compare it to? On a gradient scale between smoking a joint, or perhaps let's just say smoking in a bong, for example, over a bed of ash with a direct flame attached, or some sort of vaporizer. Where on that scale would you sort of say that this would be, if you could? And of course, I realize it's not necessarily backed by science. It's just sort of like a guess. If you could, Cade.
It's kind of comparing apples and oranges because, once again, when you're using a true vaporizer, you're using plant materials. And when you're using, one of our devices, you're not using any plant material, and it's, 80-90% pure THC. So, like I said, it's really hard to compare the two. They are two different worlds. The vaporizer is a much softer intake. And like I said, you are burning more plant materials because you're burning your vaporizing plant materials along with the THC. With our devices, it's pure medicine that you're inhaling. So
I see. Okay.
Efficient or not? I mean, it's hard to say because it's two different things,
Okay, well, that's fair enough. I would imagine overall, of course, this is, I can definitely see the merits of this. So it is primarily vaporizing. You get most of the stuff, and of course, you're dealing with concentrates, so you don't have the all the plant material that's burning, and you're ingesting that into your life. So now let's discuss the concentrate side of things. Of course, we mentioned at the start of this call that we'd actually discuss a few of the methods of preparing a concentrate so that people can actually use along with your product. But before we do that, of course, before we did this call, we also discussed some of the dangers, and why don't we start off with why people should avoid the butane extractions, and of course, mentioning the story of your friend there. So just because, of course, this kind of information is available on the internet, people can easily find how to do a butane extraction on YouTube. But people need to be aware that method, and of course, we're going to be talking about safer methods shortly. But Cade, can you just briefly touch on why people should be not considering that, at least as one of their first methods of extraction?
Yeah, it's just such a dangerous process, and I wish every video online would actually have some kind of warning before they give their information, because it's very lethal. It's like you're working around a bomb, and if you introduce flame, you're going to have an accident. You're going to blow things up. I had a buddy of mine who, we were just starting off and learning the process, and he ended up blowing out about half his house, blew out his kitchen, 2 other rooms, had 40% body burns, and barely pulled through it just because of not having enough knowledge or access to safety protocols for doing this kind of extraction. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, that's quite all right. So you were saying that he blew out his kitchen, most of his house, body burns. I remember you mentioned his tattoos were coming off.
Yeah, it literally melted tattoos off his body. Butane it's a very interesting gas. A lot of gases tend to rise or dissipate in the air, and butane will actually pool. It'll literally pool like a thick vapor. I've heard of people that have had explosions because they're working on the ground, doing their extraction, and the metal can, hit like the asphalt or the ground and created a spark and had issues with that. So it's something you have to be so careful about, and I really don't suggest making it for anyone who is just starting off because it's such a dangerous process. It's not worth the aftermath that could happen just to have your own medicine. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I would imagine that's also why a lot of federal laws in Canada and the States and other places, although this is not necessarily specified, but why making these types of extractions are extra illegal because they can blow up neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's a huge safety issue, and people really need to realize that. So, I mean, I even kind of veer I'm not always comfortable with telling people the process because I don't know if they're just going to go home and go to the depot, get some parts, and try it in their garage, you know what I'm saying? So it's definitely something you can't be intoxicated doing. You need to have a completely clear head and just really think about what you're doing. So no smoke, open flames, or anything in the immediate vicinity.
Well, as you mentioned, and I think this is also worth just reiterating very quickly here, is that your buddy or somebody you mentioned just dropped the pipe, and of course, on contact with the asphalt, the cement, it just created a little spark, and that's all that it took to make that explosion. So, of course, you just so it's not just about avoiding smoking and obvious open flames, but being extra cautious not to create even static electricity, because I'm sure even static electricity could set off an explosion under the right circumstances as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you're fueling up your car, you need to turn your car off and touch the ground before you fuel. So it's even more intense when you're dealing with solvent. So yeah.
Right. So, of course, just to mention everybody, as of course Cade mentioned, I mean, it's very easy. You can go to your local hardware store, get the materials to do this, and all the information's online. And I know that we've just said enough for some ingenious people to say, I'm going to try that. Let's be very clear here, folks. The reason why we're mentioning this is to dissuade you. And this is not one of those wink-wink situations, don't break the laws, wink-wink. No, this is not one of those. This is literally with eyes staring straight ahead, unblinking at you. Don't do this at home, folks. There are better methods that are safer, and let's talk about that. So, Cade, let me just ask you this. There's of course a number of different ways with solvents and without solvents. What would be the choice that you would recommend for the average person considering creating a concentrate?
I always suggest people to start off with either a keef, which is a simple process of just using a silk screen and moving the material around and letting all the trichomes fall and scraping it, which is a really nice, clean way. The other way is the water, cold water or ice water bag extraction, which is your water hashes. Mm-hmm. They're safer. They leave plenty of margin for error if you don't get it right the first time. So that's the only thing I suggest for people that are just starting off.
And it's also nice to point out here that, of course, for those of you who are growing your own at home or however you're doing it legally, I presume, that you can also use your trash into stash, as it's often said with these methods, because, of course, you can use your fan leaves and the trim, so you can keep the bud for smoking if that's what you prefer, and you can use the stuff that normally you would dispose of, or you can, of course, use the materials in other ways, cooking it, for example, but you can, of course, make a kif through the extraction or the pollen, shaking it over a silk screen, as Cade just mentioned, or with the bubble bags. Cold water. So that makes a fine product that you can work with your products. Yes.
As long as the material is high quality. I mean, it almost has to be a translucent to be pure enough to use on our devices. So it has to be very clean. If there's any extra material, any green material, or any kind of non-THC matter that comes through, it's going to kind of affect how our products perform, and it's also going to affect the flavor of your extract as well.
Okay. And just so if it was dirtier in a sense, so just affect the flavor, but would it still work?
It will work, but it won't work as efficiently because there's going to be biomaterials that aren't going to vaporize as efficiently as the more, the pure THC part of the material.
Okay. So I would presume that if you have some of the green or little bit impurities in the KIF or in whatever screenings that you made, could it be done with one of the other extraction methods that we're about to discuss?
Some people will take their keef and they'll do either like an isopropyl, alcohol wash, or they'll do a cold water wash after that to try to eliminate as much as the biomaterial as possible.
Okay, so how would someone do for example, an isopropyl wash? Also, people can also Google, I presume, Quizo, which would be a quick wash isopropyl wash for more information. But just can you briefly explain how somebody would go about with that process?
Well, I'm going to have to go check out that site. We never really worked too much with it, just due to the fact that it seemed like it always left a little bit of a, I don't want to say a residue, but it always tasted just different than other concentrates. I don't know if there's remnants left, or some people will use like an Everclear, like a super high % alcohol. But I think that tends to leave some of the sugars behind, so you're burning some of the sugars, because it definitely has a different taste when you use any kind of wash, alcohol or Everclear or vodka or whatever you use. So,
so it's not a superior product, but does it at least function for someone who doesn't? Because of course you're in California, you guys are blessed down there to have access to all sorts of great concentrates and buds as well.
Right.
But someone in other parts of the world, they might need to be a little bit more self-reliant. So it's not as good a product, but would you say it's acceptable? Does the job?
I would say it's acceptable, but I would rather take that material and put it through a screen and just make a nice keef out of it. I mean, the keef is really nice if you don't, over-process it.
Okay. Well, there we go, folks. So you have the information on how to make some of the concentrates to go along with a skillet like this. And I have to say that, Cade, I'm actually looking forward to giving this a try. I mean, I've seen these things before. Never had the chance, but of course, up where I'm at, that's not that surprising. But look forward to the day when, of course, all the U.S., Canada, and all places around the world legalized, so that of course all of this stuff is easily accessible, and of course the medicinal users can get what they need without any hassles, and even the recreational users can also benefit from these laws as well. So anything else that you would like to share about either the product or the processes that we've discussed?
If you guys are going to try making any kind of concentrates, just please be safe. I mean, that's my number one thing, is just be safe doing what you're doing, and enjoy it. I mean, it's such a cool new phase of the game, whole new culture, and it'll continue to grow. I mean, it's booming, so it's going to grow.
Okay, fantastic. Now, sometimes people might get this recording other than from the CannabisWorldSummit.com website. So why don't you just share the website that people can go to learn more about your products, and of course you have more videos that people can watch to learn exactly how it is to use your skillets. And so what's your website again?
Our website is www.labworx, LABWORX -skillet, just like a pan.com. And we have, like I said, we have videos on titanium and quartz, instructionals, and all kinds of things. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we get back to our customers pretty darn quickly. So.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks a lot, Cade, for informing us about this product, about this way of ingesting and vaporizing, and of course also discussing concentrates. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're so very welcome. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you very much.
Peace.